This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Bentliff, and Josefina Garcia is with us again. She's one of my favorite people. I love whenever we get to spend time together and talk about all the things we talk about, but we're doing something kind of cool, kind of interesting today. We have with us Mike Sisler, and he is the president and founder of Are You Living Premium Off-Campus Housing, which, great idea. And I'm really looking forward to kind of being a fly on the wall in this one. We're going to listen in as Josefina and Mike just kind of have a conversation about their relationship together, the engagement between ProCFO Partners and Are You Living, and what some of the characteristics and some of the nature of that has been. And I might show up, I might raise my hand and ask a question, but let's just kind of start with Mike. Welcome to ProCFO Partners, Create the Next. And Josefina, I'm going to hand the ball over to you, and looking forward to our conversation.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris, once again for spending time with me and allowing me to just hear my own voice. And thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today. This one's a little bit different. As you mentioned, Chris, in the past, I brought a theme and we kind of spoke around a theme. And so, Michael, I guess you and Are You Living in the Engagement are our theme today. And I really am curious to hear from your perspective, of course, the whole relationship, because, of course, I have my point of view and I'll give my 2 cents. But I'm really curious to hear about what led you to seek out outsourced CFO services and ultimately choose ProCFOs?
Sure. Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Josefina. It's good to be here with both of you today. We have spent a long time building up our business, and as it has become more successful and grown, what we've discovered is that the skill set that we needed when we started this business has evolved into something completely different. And we struggled for a long time to do that internally and in-house, and also ultimately searched for professionals to help us. In some cases, we started with accountants, really more of a tax accounting scenario. And of course, we got a lot of tax accountant advice, but it wasn't advice that was helping us to run and manage or grow, or even to better understand the business. And so since working with ProCFO Partners, and in particular with Josefina, we've finally had a chance to wrap our heads around the data and start to better understand the parts of our business that is strong versus the parts that need our attention. So it has been it's been a journey to get to ProCFO, and we're, I think, both blessed and a little lucky that we found Josefina, because not only does she have the skill set necessary to be our fractional CFO, but she also has a lot of background in our industry. And so she, walks the walk, knows the lingo and the language, and is often making recommendations that I think we should have known, but didn't. And so thanks to Josefina, those things are on our radar, and they can now be addressed, making the business stronger, more profitable, easier to run, more fun. So it's all positive.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the credit you give me. But, speaking of industry, when we first met, you were going through some changes. There was some personnel changes, some service changes. You were moving from, without, of course, giving details about the business, moving from an outsourced service provider to bringing some operating functions in-house. And I remember one of the first conversations we had was around the software. You mentioned that you had selected a software and and you were getting ready to set it up or something. And my response was like, of course, I understand these things take time. Just as a note, though, it would probably be good to have me in there helping you out through this. Knowing now what we went through with that software and what we're doing now, what do you think of that? What's your memory of that experience? And how much did that email nudge you? Did the email really nudge you? Did you think at that point, I don't want to do this software migration, please do come in? Or did you think you had it? I'm just really curious.
I think it was an intuitive comment that I had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into with the software change. Of course, the people selling you the software make it sound so simple, where it's going to be quick, it's going to be easy, it's going to be cheap. It was none of those things. And so I think having somebody else, ProCFO Partners and you in particular, Josefina, in our corner was instrumental, both in in a successful onboarding, and I think in that case we ultimately ended up choosing different software. And so I think the lesson there was to have somebody at your level who is seeing the business from 30,000 feet, engaged early and often, that is ultimately much more productive, creates less drama, and drama is expensive. Mm-hmm. And so I think in the long run, having you engaged was actually, economically, much more cost effective.
Got it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, software migration, fun being 10, and horrible, would rather have my nails pulled being 0, where does it rank?
I would say that was that was probably a 0. You didn't give me any minus zeros to choose from, so I'll go with 0. And however,
yeah, hang on to that one, because the next question is, when we moved to the right software, on a scale of 1 to 10, how fun was that vacation that you took for a whole month?
Yeah, 10. I mean, so to all of you who are on the fence about whether or not to do this or not, just, stop messing around. You want to grow your business, you want to take it to the next level, this is how you do it. So, and it's much more fun. It's much less stress. Like I said, the first integration of the software was just drama from the beginning to the end. And I don't know that there was a big difference between the two softwares. I think the main difference was having, ProCFO engaged, that made, round 2, the questions were thoughtful, that helped pick the new software provider. We didn't pick the most expensive option. We picked the option that was right for the business. And then, like so many things that you purchase, they come with, variables. And so having and different options that we could have chose within that software. And so having Josefina and ProCFO on board to navigate that process and say, well, these are critical. This is why we're buying the software, but these other things, we don't need it, or we already do that in-house. It was very, very helpful. I mean, that's kind of getting out into the weeds, but it started at a much, much higher level than that. And so, yeah, from a 0 to a 10, from the first software to the second.
Awesome. I will take that scoring. If somebody could write that down, make sure we have that. Just kidding, Michael. It's been a pleasure. And I really enjoy the relationship that we have and the work that we've done, because it's been challenging, and it's exactly like you said, it's been fun, or it's turned into fun, because through our hurdles, I think we learned a lot about not just software in general and what software migrations entail, and what's necessary from everybody in the team, but about, are you living? I appreciate having to how deep I had to dive in the data, because it allowed me to know so much about the business. So something I want to know that I don't think I've asked you, to tell me a little bit about what board meetings were like before I helped you prep, and what they're like now.
Sure. Well, first, let me just address that, the deep dive that you've done in our business. And this is something that I don't think I could have articulated prior to having worked with you and ProCFO Partners. But that deep dive, I think, has been really incredible, because you have dove in areas where I don't think we even realized we needed you to dive in. And I think that's one of the lessons learned here, is that great questions come with great answers, but if you don't know what the question to ask is, then what? And that has certainly been an area that you have filled in on that deep dive, is asking the right questions, pointing us in the right direction, getting us focused on the difference that makes the difference in our business. And so that has been really, really fantastic. In terms of the board meetings, let me just say that we are represented by a board of directors. We've got a chairman and 11 board members, and we meet triannually. And at every one of those board meetings, we, establish our goals for the next trimester, and we report back, our successes and failures on the previous trimester. And like any board, there's it's a lot about accountability. And one of the challenges I think that we found with the board is that they're only meeting with us, 3 times a year. And it's so easy for us as business operators to be caught up in the day-to-day minutia of the business, the activities that you just have to do to keep the lights on Monday through Friday. Whereas the board of directors is really looking for a high level overview of the business, so that they can help us make strategic decisions to grow. That's 2 very, very different skill sets. And like we touched on in the beginning of this interview, is that Josefina, you and ProCFO help us to create reports for the board of directors that help them see the data on our business. And it might be the good, the bad, and the ugly, but this is the data that they need to be able to make honest decisions about our business. And prior to engagement with ProCFO, our board meetings revolved around stories, stories that I would tell the board of directors about our business and where we're at and where we're going. And while stories are maybe part of the presentation that's necessary, it was never backed up by hard data. And so now with your help, with ProCFO's help, we show up with less story and lots of data to back up whatever story we have. So if we're talking about historical data, we can or a story that's about our history and what we think we were successful in or could use improvement in, and now we can show up with the data, to prove it one way or the other, and And same thing even about our projections and our growth in the business. We're now showing up with data. I will say that it has made the board meetings much more productive. It's made our business much more productive. I think that one of the comments that our chairman likes to say is, what difference does it make if you're the fastest runner if you're running in the wrong direction? And Josefina and ProCFO Partners has made sure that we're always running in the right direction.
Thank you for saying that. I as a CFO, as a person who sees the big picture, sometimes I feel like I'm chastising or like the school mom, come over here, do this. So I appreciate the recognition that I'm just trying to keep us on track. I see the big picture. I see the projects that are coming down the pipeline for Are You Living? And I am so excited to see them, but I also recognize the order and the pattern and the things that need to go into place for those to be successful, so we can celebrate together those successes. And I so excited that we're here now after more than a year of working together and learning what Are You Living needs and just getting excited about the growth and what we're doing next. So thank you for all your kind words and letting me pull you around and point you in the right direction.
And for all the people out there listening or watching, who have businesses that are, either struggling or just, wildly successful. We've all hired professionals and we need them in our businesses and we pay them. But one thing that I have found that comes out of ProCFO at all levels, and I think you just heard it from Josefina, is a passion for the success of our business. And that's not something you can always pay for. You hope for it. And I think more often than not, you're maybe surprised when you see it. And so I'm always surprised when I see it, coming out of anybody. And with ProCFO Partners and Josefina, it's standard operating procedure, which is really fantastic. Makes a difference, makes the days better. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Michael, if you could put ProCFO or the engagement or just ProCFO Partners in one word. If you were going to if you could give us one word, what would it be?
Outstanding. No.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's been so fun to sit here and listen to the two of you. And it's really captured an energy. And I have a couple thoughts or questions. And one of those is Michael, as you're sharing about now we go in with a lot more data, what are some of those points for both of you? Is there a KPI or a data point that was especially interesting? Either this is a thing we didn't know and now we know, or this is a thing that was here and now it's way over here that is, I guess, a bit emblematic of the relationship. Is there a data point or a measurement that you can point to that says this one really means a lot to us?
So I think because our project has been so focused on big picture, we really have been looking at the company as a whole. But the KPIs that we track inevitably for the business are going to be our debt service coverage, which, of course, with my plethora of data that I shared with the board, we were able to present the DSCR for short. By property or by bed, which in our case is important because we're making the strategic decisions right now on whether the economies are or where we apply the economies of scale. We have apartments and we have standalone houses. So now we're also tracking certain things like costs and revenues by the bed in an apartment building versus the separate houses. Some of the things that we also look at are how overhead costs are applied across the board to these properties. So there's a lot of these data points that we talk about regularly, DSCR being the most important one. And then as we move towards development, just understanding what each additional bed means to Are You Living, whether that's owning it, operating it, from every standpoint.
And Mike, as you have shared that stuff with the board, this more granular stuff, or these are the data points that matter to us, and we're going to try and be doing these things or focusing on that stuff. You mentioned that it's a lot less anecdotal now. It's a lot less story. Has the board, and you also mentioned that, there's been an appreciation that now we're moving in the right direction, but how do you feel like that has changed maybe your relationship with that data, right? So it wasn't necessarily the first thing that came to mind before, but now as you go into these conversations and it is like, hey, I have something to share with you. How has that changed, I guess, your relationship with how you're thinking about the future, the strategic future?
I think intuition and, gut and luck and all of that, preparation meets opportunity. And, there's a lot of ways that you can talk about kind of how a small business kind of, puts on its boots and grows. But at some point, it needs more than that. And the access to the data, the clarity around the data has been instrumental in helping us make, strategic decisions about which direction this company should grow in. And the why is no longer, intuition, it is now data. And as the president and an owner of this business, I can tell you that you sleep differently when you're sleeping on data versus intuition, and it's a positive thing for sure. And so I highly recommend it. And of course, the data just keeps getting more and more granular. So, we started in broad brush strokes. Let's make sure that the data we have is accurate. We spent a lot of time on that. And then what we have found is that once we got past that, that first hurdle, that we would see areas where we should be, digging for gold. That data is a little bit of a treasure map now. And, that says, dig here. And, here's the big X on your financials. There's gold buried in them there hills. And so we're now, digging for it, in our own business. And that is, that is a monumental change in the way we are operating going forward as a small business, moving from intuition to, database decisions. And every step along the way, what I've been finding is that, is that we do get more and more granular. Sometimes that comes from the board of directors reviewing our data and asking thoughtful questions. Well, now they can ask thoughtful questions. Something they couldn't do before because they were missing so many of the basics. And I think the same thing goes for ProCFO and Josefina and myself. When we now, look at the data on our business, we are often getting more and more granular now as we say, this is very interesting what this data, is showing, what's it trying to tell us? What can we exploit here? Do we need to be defensive in this area? And often that just leads to, let's get more clarity on this data. And I'm excited by that. I mean, this is not the area of my business that got me up in the mornings when we started, but it is today.
That's interesting as you're sharing that, because one of the things that I'm just kind of capturing as we're talking and as you're sharing is even just through some of your metaphors or analogies, it seems to me, having met you all of 20 minutes ago, that you're something of a storyteller, and intuition and vision and feeling and gut check. That's a great strength for many founders, for many business leaders. Strategy, the stuff, the data, the nuts and bolts, the machinations often are not. And it feels like, and that's when it's really great to bring a compliment in where that is their strength. How is Josefina having some of that complementary skill set changed just you? So as you go to work, are you feeling like you're a little more free to be focusing on your strengths, or you're a little more free to be learning about this thing that you weren't even curious about before? How have you as a leader been impacted by this?
It's a great question. And let me say, I think the answer to that is both. It gives clarity. The data, comes with that clarity. So in some cases, it's something as simple as the data shows that we need to stop doing something, and that's terrific news, right? I mean, that frees up time and capital and resources, and lets us focus on the areas that we should be focusing on. So that's, I think, financially, the data is strengthening our company. I would say on a personal level, I love it because any anxiety that I had around a lack of data is going away. So if I ever had any concerns, sometimes there's that intuition, kind of creeping in, but I can't identify it. And now it's clearly identifiable because it's now, reduced to writing and a report, and it's more of a math problem than an intuition issue. And that also frees up a lot of personal resources. My bandwidth, the hours in the day, I can now really start to focus on the core elements of the business that are going to make, the biggest impact on its profitability and its growth and its safety and security going forward. So it has made, a big difference, not only on the financials, but in my day-to-day operations of the business.
Well, Michael, this has been just a pleasure for all of us. Michael Sisler is at RU Living, that's letter R, letter U, living.com, and ProCFOPartners.com, obviously Josefina. And we can't wait to have you guys back in a year or whatever, where we can reconnect on some of these things and say, what's changed since the last conversation, and what new ideas have you been kicking off, and how'd that software migration actually settle once the dust was all, off the table, and we're looking forward to that. So thank you both for your kindness and your generosity and your relationship and sharing that with us today. We've really enjoyed it.
Chris, Josefina, thank you. It's been a pleasure spending a few minutes with you guys and kind of walking down memory lane of why the relationship between RU Living and ProCFO is so positive in so many ways within our business. It's a nice reminder of what and who to be grateful for.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.